Now, sometimes we need to check for the existence of an object. For example, I want to check if we have an object at this location, restaurants/1/features/1. How do we do that? Very easy. This .angularfire.database.object. I'm going to use this as the location. Now, as you know, this returned an observable. So I can store this in a field in our class. Let's call it exists. Now, I'm not setting the type here because I don't worry about IntelliSense at this stage. And then set this that exists to what we get from the object method. And finally, in our template, I want to add a div and render it only if we have an object at the given location. So I'm going to use exists, apply the async pipe, and then the Elvis operator. And finally, I want to check the $value property. So if we have an object at that location, and that object has a value property set to true, this div will be rendered. Save. Back to the browser. So you can see our div is rendered here. Now I go back to Firebase console and change this to false. Back in our Angular app, you can see that div is gone. Or if I delete this node, that still means we do not have an object at that location. So when we go back to our Angular app, we shouldn't see that div. Perfect. Now let's add the node back. So feature 1 set to true. And we get the div again. Now let's take this to the next level. Sometimes we need to check for the existence of an object to do something programmatically. For example, if that object exists, we want to do something, otherwise we want to do something else. How do we do that? In that case, we need to subscribe to that observable. So this .exists, .subscribe, x goes to, let's simply log x on the console. So this is what we get. We have an object with $value and $key properties. So back here, I can check if x exists and x.$value is truthy. I want to display exists. Otherwise, not exists. Save. So we get exists in the console. But let me show you something. If I go back to the console and change this to false, we get another message in the console. And once again, if I go back here and change this to true, look, now we have 3 messages in the console. Now sometimes this can be a problem because you want to check for the existence of an object only the first time a page is loaded. You want to execute a piece of code only once. But in this case, because we have a subscription to that observable, anytime there is a change in that node, we'll be notified and that code will be executed. How do we prevent this? How do we make sure that that code is executed only once? We can use the take operator on observables. So, .take1. And that simply means we get one object from this observable and then the subscription is terminated. Let's look at the result. Save. Back to the browser, we have an error. Take is not a function. The reason for this is because take operator is not implemented in this observable here. So we need to import it manually. Import rxjs, add operator take. Save. Back here, refresh. Okay, look, we have one message in the console, exists. And this is executed the first time our page was loaded. Now, if I go back to Firebase and change this to false, look, we don't get any new messages in the console. So the subscription is terminated. So here's the takeaway. When subscribing to observables, remember that subscription exists in the memory, unless you apply the take one operator or unsubscribe from it at some point in the component's lifecycle. Next, we're going to look at sorting data in Firebase.